this is mostly in response to people like Rocking Mr. E. And since he seems to be a pretty good example of how conservatives think, I would not be surprised if there are tons of people who make this fallacy. The fallacy in question is this: to assume that all socialists view socialism simply as a stepping stone to communism. You see, the fallacy made here is a composition fallacy. Now, there are two parts to the composition fallacy: part whole and whole part. I always use the basketball team analogy to explain it. A part whole fallacy would be to say, well, there's one member of that basketball team who's really good. They have Michael Jordan on their team, so everyone in the team must be good. That's a fallacy, a pretty obvious fallacy. A whole part fallacy looks like this: that basketball team is really good, therefore each individual member of that basketball team must be good. That is a logical fallacy. That does not follow at all. It could be the case that almost everyone in the basketball team is good, but there's one guy who's not bad, but he's not good, he's kind of okay. The fallacy here is a part-whole fallacy. That is, part of socialists, particularly like Marxist-Leninists and Maoists, do view socialism as a stepping stone to full communism. That's not true of the whole of socialists. I can give you two examples of people of a type of socialism or socialist, which that's not true of. For instance, democratic socialists, which are the most moderate form of socialists, do not advocate socialism as a stepping stone to communism, and it is ridiculous to say that they're just lying when they say that. If you study democratic socialism at all, you realize that they do not advocate for full socialism to begin with, so of course they wouldn't advocate for communism afterwards. So you see, democratic socialists do not advocate the complete abolition of capitalism. They simply advocate a heavily regulated capitalism with a social safety net, and in which more industries are completely nationalized than are now. For instance, they would advocate the nationalization of the banking industry, of education, and healthcare, which in the United States, none of those three things are currently nationalized. But they would advocate for those things being nationalized. But yes, they do not advocate socialism as a stepping stone to communism, as Maoists and Marxist-Leninists would. There's another form of socialist, the anarcho-communist, who they actually ruled a large portion of Spain for a while, and they controlled a part of Russia before getting kicked out and into Ukraine, where they were finally finished off. In both cases, the Bolsheviks killed the anarchists who were actually running a workable, working anarchistic society. Which, by the way, something doesn't count as an anarchistic society unless it's run by people who are anarchists. Just because you have a failed state, like Somalia, doesn't automatically mean it's anarchy. It has to literally be run by people who are anarchists. Anyway, those people do not advocate for socialism as a stepping stone to communism. Rather, these anarcho-communists want to go straight to full communism. They don't want to go through a dictatorship of the proletarian step, because they would worry that the dictatorship of the proletarian would never end and it would never actually get to full communism. So they go straight to full communism. On their socialist values, they still count as socialist because their values and the lines they run it on are socialistic, but under a situation of full communism, which is it still has a government. It's decentralized and run by the workers, and run by workers' unions and stuff like that. So there's two examples of varieties of socialism that do not advocate socialism as simply a step to communism. So do not assume that everyone who calls himself a socialism is simply advocating for the Soviet Union or for Maoist China. And do not just claim that they're lying when they say that they don't want those two things, and that it's a part of some sort of conspiracy. Because if you watch Rocky Mystery's videos, you think there was some sort of mass communist conspiracy to take over the world and kill everyone. Totally not understanding that there are varieties in all of them. They're very similar. All these types of socialism, they're like in the same football field. They're in the same arena. They all have socialist values. They're all very similar, but they still have fundamental differences. And one last gripe I have when it comes to both conservatives and right-wing libertarians when it comes to understanding socialism is this. Not everything the state does counts as socialism. There are things that the state can do that are not socialistic. For instance, the massive corporate welfare is not socialism. That's corporatism. That is not socialistic. That is not under socialist. That is not in line with socialist values or socialist aims. So, yeah, back when I was hardcore libertarian, I used to see this all the time. Like, everything the state does is socialism. Everything, which is just BS. Anyway, that's it.